Last night on this program, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Carl Levin, said what we know about the treatment of prisoners in American custody during the Bush administration indicates to him that it's time for a commission to determine whether there should be indictments of Bush administration officials for torture. The New York Times editorial page follows up today, saying that Levin's committee has laid out a strong case for criminal charges against Donald Rumsfeld, his top lawyer William Haynes, and possibly also Alberto Gonzales, as well as Dick Cheney's top lawyer David Addington. The Times is calling for the appointment of a prosecutor now. And so the lame duck, lazy circlings of an administration that was hoping to close with a few quiet midnight regulations and a pardon here or there has instead swung round to defending torture all the time. What a bummer. And now they're getting all high-minded about it. Here's President Bush on Fox News.
I've had, a lot of serious challenges. What matters to me is I didn't compromise my soul to be a popular guy.
We will have to take him at his word on the soul stuff. Meanwhile, Vice President Cheney told the Washington Times today that it would have been, quote, unethical and immoral to not do what this administration did after 9/11 in the name of national security. He said this, quote, was it torture? I don't believe it was torture. We spent a great deal of time and effort getting legal advice, legal opinion out of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. And I think it produced the desired result. I think it's directly responsible for the fact that we've been able to avoid or defeat further attacks against the homeland for 7.5 years. The Vice President is saying here that he got legal cover to take the name torture off of things that had always been called torture before because the country just needed that information. Only torture could get that information for us, and we needed that information to keep us safe. Here's the complicating question for Vice President Cheney's defense. What if torture doesn't actually work? It's a question that we can know the answer to. It is knowable. This is what Cheney told ABC this week about waterboarding Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
There was a period of time there 3 or 4 years ago when about half of everything we knew about Al-Qaeda came from that one source.
Well, a former senior CIA official who read all those interrogation reports on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he told Vanity Fair this week that, quote, 90% of it was bleeping bull bleep. So 90% of half of everything we knew about Al-Qaeda was bleeping bull bleep? How about this? Same report in Vanity Fair. Quote, a former Pentagon analyst adds, KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, produced no actionable intelligence. None. So Dick Cheney says we had to call torture legal because we needed to torture because torture gave us such useful intelligence. The people in charge of making use of the information that was tortured out of these guys say that information was worthless, of no utility whatsoever. At best, 90% bullpucky. Joining us now is David Rose, who is a contributing editor at Vanity Fair. He's the man who interviewed the intelligence sources I just quoted. He has just published a deeply reported piece called Tortured Reasoning for VanityFair.com. Mr. Rose, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
You've heard what the Vice President said about the importance of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Your sources are directly contradicting the Vice President here. How close were your sources to the facts here? How close were they to the intelligence gleaned from this interrogation?
They were very close to it. They read the reports, they read the transcripts of the interrogations, and they were aware of the operations that were taking place, the actions that were being taken against Al-Qaeda in this period. And their assessment is that intelligence from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had very little to do with the actions that the intelligence community was generating by the military and so forth as a result of all the intelligence that was coming into the intelligence community at that time.
Your findings and what these sources told you have huge political implications here in the U.S. because the defense of torture at this point in the political game, at this point in the Bush administration, in these waning days of that administration, has really boiled down to the idea that torture was necessary, that it was effective. I know that your sources have to be as aware of that as we all are. Why do you think that they chose to talk to you about it?
Well, I think actually a lot of people in the intelligence community feel deeply angry and betrayed by the damage that the Bush administration has done to the CIA and other intelligence agencies because of their use of torture. They feel that the mission that they had, the belief, the morale they had as they saw it as the good guys, has been completely eroded by the use of torture. And I think what makes them madder than anything else is that if you go back to the beginning of this debate, right after 9/11, when the CIA started taking the fateful steps that would lead it to use torture, nobody paused for a second and said, well, hang on, does this actually work? All the expertise built up not only in the United States but going back centuries in Europe, in the entire developed world, taught us that torture is in fact a very ineffective method of gaining information from a detainee or suspect. And the most experienced counter-terrorist investigators who I interviewed in researching this article are unanimous in saying they got much better information from regular, legal, constitutional methods, rapport building, developing a relationship with a source. That way they got really good information.
One of the things that you write about in this latest piece for Vanity Fair is the prospect that there was so much false information provided by people who were being tortured that information, those false leads, should actually also be seen as harm because they resulted in the intelligence agencies squandering resources, wasting time chasing down false leads, right?
Absolutely. I interviewed one FBI agent, a very experienced counter-terrorist agent, who says that about half of the time he and his colleagues were spending was chasing down false leads generated by the use of torture.
Mr. Rose, one last question for you. You also asked the FBI Director Robert Mueller if any attacks on America had been disrupted thanks to intelligence obtained through torture, through these enhanced interrogation techniques. What was his answer to you?
Well, he was very reluctant to answer the question. He looked deeply uneasy, and he said, well, as far as I'm aware, we have not disrupted any plot as a result of information gained in this fashion. And of course, a number of terrorist plots have been disrupted in America, and a number of very serious plots have also been disrupted in Britain. Some really credible plots with big bombs and caches of explosives and so forth. People directly. I also interviewed Peter Clark, who was the Britain's chief counter-terrorist police officer between 2002 and the middle of 2008. And he says to me too that no actionable intelligence that led to the disruption of any of the very serious plots in the United Kingdom came from torture either.
You can disrupt terrorist plots, you just can't necessarily do it through torture, which begs the question, why torture? David Rose, contributing editor at Vanity Fair. The article is called Tortured Reasoning. It's at vanityfair.com right now. Thank you so much for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you very much.
If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait. I fly like paper, get high like planes. If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait.
There are a lot of people who lie and get away with it.